I show you guys how to go ahead and continue to mod Skyrim. I know that this has gone on a little longer than I had expected, but still, again, I figured I'd rather show you guys just how long the process actually is, and give you guys a chance to ask me any questions, rather than just jumping right back into things. Yeah, so, hi Tyler. Okay, so where we left off last time, we were going through Loot, which is the load order optimizer tool. And I showed you guys how it will provide you a bunch of warnings and a bunch of errors for anything that's incompatible, anything that you need to know, anything you need to clean, and just generally tell you about all of the mods that you have. So if you remember last time, we had a bunch of different errors, whether they were errors about uncompatible mods, or mods that were missing some compatibility patches for other mods, things like that. And we went through most of them on stream, but there were a few of them that I ended up doing after the stream. So almost all of our error messages are now gone. I was able to either find compatibility patches, or find updates, or figure out what needs to be done. There are a couple of them that are still there. So for example, this Immersive Fort Dawnguard mod, it says that I need compatibility patches for Legacy of the Dragonborn and Palaces and Castles Enhanced. I don't actually need them, I have them already. Just for whatever reason, the name is not the one that the optimizer tool is expecting, which is why it's saying, hey, you need a compatibility patch, but it's not in red, because it has looked at everything that is installed and knows that it's not going to be a major problem. It's just saying, hey, by the way, compatibility patch, and we can just ignore that. We have it, it's not going to be a big deal. It'll probably go away better after we do some reconfiguration in SSE edit. Maybe, we'll see, but for right now we're just going to leave that alone. And the same goes for the only thing that we do have in red left in our list, which is warning us to delete this particular script. There was actually a light compatibility patch that somebody released that actually makes it so that we can ignore this warning. Basically, all it does is it gives the unofficial Skyrim patch the precedence that it needs to run first, but it redirects it to this particular script in order for our mod to still work. So it basically allows both of them to work simultaneously in the way that they need to make everything work right. So because it's an unofficial patch, compatibility patch for the both of them, our mod is not going to recognize it, but because I know that I have it, we can ignore this warning safely. Again, remember that a lot of the messages on here are not things that you need to live or die by. As long as you can understand what it's saying and know whether it applies to what you have installed or not, that's what they're there for. So, now I'm going to show you guys the next step. So we've installed all of our mods, we've used Loot to make sure that it is at least all up to date, and that there's no major compatibility issues between any of our mods. And now we can start in on cleaning everything up. So there's a couple of things quickly that we want to do before we get into that, just for safety's sake. Because once we do start working on SSE edit and Rybash, if you don't take these couple of steps before you do that, it can make it a little more difficult for these other tools to work. So we're going to close Loot for right now because we actually don't need it. And I'm going to show you guys how to use Body Slide. Body Slide and Outfit Studio is a mod that allows you to convert a whole bunch of different textures and meshes to match whatever body mesh and skeleton you have. It's Have I heard of the High Elves? Yes, I have. Hi, Ange. Hi, Abe. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. So in this case, because we do have the CBBE body, and because we have a couple of different armors that we need to make compatible with that, we're gonna go ahead and run that. So the body slide and outfit studio is very complex because it allows you to go in and customize each body and outfit if you want to. We're not going to get into that. I'm just going to show you how to use it as a tool to make sure that all of your NPCs are able to wear all of the new armors and clothes that they have available. So once you have body slide in here, in order to run it from here, again, you just have to make sure that it's pointing to the right spot. So in this case, we need to make sure it's going to body slide x64exe. Why does it have a nipples option? Because it literally has an option for every single defining point of the body. You can customize the length and size of each individual finger if you wanted to. Basically, it starts up and goes down. But anyway, so you just want to make sure that it's pointing to the right executable and make sure that it's starting in the right folder. That's all you need to do, and then just click play on it. You don't need to mess around with any of this. You actually just want to go down and select Batch Build. Once you select that, you can go ahead and just make sure that everything is checked, which it is, and then click Build. And we're just going to make sure that each option we want is the one that we have. So in this case, we have the underwear version because we are not going to be having nudity. While this is technically, I can't guarantee that anything on here won't be adult content. Obviously, no nudity on Twitch, even if it's in a game. And we're just going to make sure that we have the option that we want installed here. And the main reason why I want to make sure we have that is because we have the practical female armors. So you'll notice that I'm making sure to select that that's the one that we want to use. So that way we don't have to deal with boob plate. And yes, it is annoying having to go through and click each individual one, but it is actually worth it to make sure that you're using the right option for the body that you have installed. You just do want to be careful because you'll notice that sometimes the options get flipped around for whatever reason. It's probably because they want to trick you and make sure you're not just like this one. We don't need physics on it. Okay, and then just click OK, and it'll go ahead and it'll automatically... Yes, I'm sure I don't need physics on my armor. And then you just go ahead and let it build, and it'll automatically convert all of those items and clothes that we want to use to the body that we have installed, so that way there's no clipping issues, no weird, angles on it or anything. And that's really all you have to do with this. Again, the main reason you want to do this before you go ahead and do Rybash is because you want to make sure that it gets edited before you possibly build it into a patch, because if you don't, it can lead to some weird things. So all sets processed successfully. So we'll just click OK, and we can now close that out. And that's all you need to do with that. So now that we've run FNIS and body slide, I'll just go ahead and run FNIS again just to make sure that everything's fine with that. I did it last time, but we did go through and add some new things to our load order and sort it around a little bit, so we can always just run it again just to make sure. I don't know, did the stream go down, anybody? What do you mean, did the stream go down? Like, are you not hearing me? Are you not seeing me? What's going on? Consistence check 0. Damn mobile Twitch. Okay, so we installed the 164 animations from 2 different mods, and 0 possible consistency issues. So we'll go ahead and click exit. The next tool we're going to want to use is what's called Rybash. Rybash started as a mod organizing tool before we had loot, and as a mod installer tool before we had Vortex, and even before we had Nexus Mod Manager, as I told you guys back in the first episode of our How to Mod Skyrim series. So, when you go ahead and you load into Rybash, different version of Rybash was previously installed. Do you want to create a backup? I'm gonna click no for right now, and I'm just gonna make sure that this is pointing to the right spot. And it is. Weird. We don't really need to make a backup because it's going to go through. What is it yelling about now? Just... Oh, apparently I need to fix that. That's just something I need to reinstall quickly. Load order was changed outside of Rybash and has been reverted. Okay. So, again, it's just warning us that our load order was changed by loot, which is fine. So, we just want to make sure that they're all installed. Obviously, there are some of them that are not installed yet, because we ended up needing to work with those outside of loot. So we're just going to go ahead and make sure that we check each and every one of these. Yes, make sure we activate that as well. Okay. And that's all of them. So now those are all active in load order. I'm going to go ahead and close this. And I just want to double check here. Yeah, so these are the only ones that we don't want active. We will activate our bash patch, though. And I'm just going to run loot again and make sure that it resorts all of those. Yeah, so it did have to update it, so we'll just click apply. And that is something that you'll have to get used to with Rybash, because it was intended to be used as a loader and organizer. It will fight a little bit against loot especially, and against your... Yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and click Control-Z. And you can see how now all of them are selected. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to activate the bash patch. There we go. Okay, so that's the load order that we want. And we're just going to make sure that this bash patch is selected, right-click on it, and click Rebuild Patch. And it's going to tell us two things. It's going to tell us what kinds of things we're importing, and what mods it has found that we can actually build these things from. So the main things that we want to make sure that we have in all of these leveled lists are anything that would really impact our game. Rybash is very good about detecting what we have that needs to be recompiled and automatically selecting it. So we have actors, their AI packages, their death items, their spells. We have import cells. That's a very important one because it imports, obviously, the world cells. If we don't do that, then there can be a lot of different issues with clipping and making sure that mods that are supposed to overwrite each other actually do, and that they both don't load at once. Import stat effect stats, enchantment stats, factions, graphics, etc., etc., etc. Basically, what this does is it takes all of these different changes from all of these different mods and makes sure that we... What is this? Yeah, no, we're not going to check that. Basically, it makes sure that all of these different lists from all of these different mods get added into one list that the game can reference, so that way nothing gets missed. So everything that's supposed to load in a particular area is all in one patch, basically, and the game can reference that to see what it needs to load first and what it needs to load last. You know, once you hit a certain level, everything from every mod that would then be available to you gets activated as soon as you hit that particular level. Everything that an actor needs from every single mod in here will be available to it from this one list, as opposed to needing to go to a bunch of different mod folders and mod files. So all you need to do is update bash patch, and then just click build patch. And it'll go ahead and just run itself. Again, it's like the body slide. It's a very foolproof tool to use, thankfully. It does take a little while because essentially what it's doing is copying all of these different packages from all of these different mods into one singular file. So it will take a little bit. And we just wait. Yes, this always takes a hot minute, especially the first time you do it. It can take a long while. Now, one thing while we're waiting on this to keep in mind about Rybash is it still, even with the light plugins, has a limit of the number of mods that it can handle. And that number is 523. So you'll see that we're at 518 out of 523, even though we have 307 of those as light plugins. That is a limitation of Rybash, not of the game. But if you wanted to use more mods than that, that's when you would need to start using SSE Edit to combine, for example, a bunch of different patches into one large patch, or multiple different mods that edit the same thing into one large mod. We're not going to be going that far in using SSE Edit ourselves, because that's not something that I really know how to do well enough to feel comfortable instructing you guys on. But what I am going to show you guys is how to edit certain mod files to make them work together better, and to make them work together with as few actual errors as possible. Because even with compatibility patches, sometimes there are still a lot of conflicts that can happen, and it's easier to just go into SSE Edit and edit the mod files than it is to just throw the compatibility patch in, do nothing else, and just hope that it works. Exactly, super work together is exactly the idea there. Basically, you go in and tell it, hey, instead of doing this thing that you're supposed to do, you're actually going to do this thing that the compatibility patch wants you to do. And, of course, this is only something that you want to do when you're using the mod in only this particular profile. If you decide to play around with profiles in Vortex, then any mod file that you have installed, you would either need to basically edit it and then reinstall it as a variant in order to have two different edits of the same mod in different profiles, or you would have to just use different mods in general. You wouldn't be able to edit the mod file to work with, say, let's say there's two different mods that are compatible with a third. You wouldn't be able to edit the same third mod file to work with both of them. You would need to have two different instances, and that just gets really complicated, so I wouldn't recommend that. And we're still waiting. That's a lot of detail. I'm joking. Oh, even the timer is stuck. That's great. Gotta love it when that happens. Oh, there we go. Right? And I oop indeed. And again, let me know if you guys have any questions about this, or if you have any suggestions, because that is kind of what I'm here for, is to take any questions that you have and answer them as best I can. I don't pretend to be an expert, but I have been modding Skyrim for only slightly less time than I've been playing it, so I do have probably about 5 years of experience. And of course, you always spend more time modding Skyrim than you do actually playing it, so I guess it all evens out in the end. Though I will take this time to let you guys know, I am in the process of reorganizing everything that I have up here, so hopefully, sometime in the next couple of weeks, this scene that you've seen behind me here, for the entire time that I've been streaming, will hopefully get updated, so that, that nice Legacy of the Dragonborn banner we have, will be able to be hung up, in front of this window. Everything that I have Skyrim related will be on a cabinet that'll be replacing my altar here, so that you guys will be able to see the Skyrim helmet, the wonderful Stein mug that Angela gave me. You'll be able to see the wonderful statue of Meridia that she also gave me, which I have a mini D20 coming in that I can put on the pedestal so it'll have a proper beacon. So that'll be wonderful. She also gave me, let me see if I can show this one off here. You'll recognize these absolute shitheads that I've had to fight before. Let me see if I can get it to focus here. Come on, focus. There we go. One of the Dwemer spheres that are always so annoying to fight, but also one of the coolest looking of the Dwemer machines that you get to fight. So those will be put prominently on display for everybody to see there. I don't know if you'll be able to see the Centurion from that far away, but you'll at least be able to see the banner and the helmet and everything else, so that'll be nice. Alright, so it's done loading, and you can tell that it's now actually importing everything from each of the different mods. Once it gets to this stage, it actually tends to go through at a pretty good clip. So, obviously, like, weapon, armor, clothing, and clutter fixes is going to have a lot of them. But do. Yes, believe it or not, I was actually missing a display mod from Legacy of the Dragonborn the last time I was running it. So it's called Cheeses of Tamriel. Made, obviously, referring to the obsession with cheese that Sheogorath has. And it adds in a whole bunch of different kinds of cheese that you have to collect and add to the museum. So we'll have that to look forward to. So as far as what I ended up doing to switch up the mod pack a little bit, a lot of people really liked the the aesthetics of the game, as opposed to I mean, obviously they like the content of the game as well, but there was some of it that I couldn't include. So one of them was Lucian. I absolutely loved the mod. It was a great mod. I would highly recommend it for anybody who's doing their own playthrough. Unfortunately, for my computer right now, it is extremely script heavy, and it was leading to a bunch of crashes because my computer just cannot keep up. So I ended up removing that one along with all of the patches for it from this particular playthrough, and instead I focused more on just improving the NPCs that we already had. So I installed things like relationship dialogue overhaul, and a bunch of other things that improve the look of that particular NPC. Yeah, if we can get a mod in here, let me know if I need to mod you, and I will definitely do that. Okay. Thank you. Alright, so now we have our bash patch. It went ahead and took all of those different leveled lists and put them all into one. And you can see it is activated, which means that it will overwrite everything else. So its leveled lists will overwrite everybody else's, because it's at the last part of the load order. So we can actually go ahead and close that now, because for right now, we are done with that. So the next thing that I'm going to do is introduce you guys to SSE Edit by going back to loot. I know, an odd thing, but... Hello, good afternoon, thank you for joining us again. Alright, so, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to clean all of our mods here. So, if you go into loot, you'll notice that these particular mods found ITM records, deleted references, deleted nav meshes, and it says a guide to cleaning plugins using Xedit can be found here, and it has a handy-dandy little link that you can click on. And it'll take you to the Xedit Cleaning and Error Checking Tome of Xedit, also known as QAC or Quick Auto Clean. So, you would technically use the Quick Auto Clean, but it's been installed within actual SSE Edit. So I will show you how to do it the way that I know how to do it. But the reason why I wanted to bring you here is because I wanted to show you let me see if I can find it. Yeah, you can see that there's actually a lot here. So, again, it's a very good thing to read through this, because you'll notice, remember, there are no intentional ITMs. Not necessarily true, there are a couple of them that are intentional, and loot will warn you about them. But, in every other case where there isn't a note that specifically says, do not clean, you want to do this. Same goes with deleted references and deleted nav meshes. Deleted nav meshes require manual cleaning, which is what we're going to go through after this. Right now we're going to work with identical to master edits and deleted references. So here's where you want to go to. Oh no, actually you don't. This is the only step required. Remove XN subrecord. Okay, so we'll keep this open just for later, but it looks like they've changed their how-to since the last time I used it, which was just a few months ago, which is odd. But anyways, so we're actually going to close this for right now. I'll just make sure that this is set to go to the proper place, and it is. So we'll go ahead and run it. I don't like to use the quick auto clean, to be honest, because it doesn't seem to work as well. Unless something's been updated since the last time I ran it, it still doesn't really work as well as manually going through and cleaning it. Also know that they do have a very easy way to be able to contribute. I have already contributed a couple of times to them, but if you guys do end up going in and modding Skyrim and using SSE Edit or any of their edit tools, because SSE Edit is just the special edition Skyrim, they also have TES5 Edit, which is the Skyrim version. They also have versions for at least Fallout 4 and Fallout 3, which work very well as well. So if you end up using any of their tools, I highly recommend either donating between PayPal, Patreon, Ko-Fi, whichever. But we're going to go ahead and click close on that. But for right now, all you want to do is you want to go ahead and unselect all, which is easiest done by just highlighting select none. And then the only ones you want to load are update BSM. You want to go update Dawnguard, Dragonborn, Hearthfires. So we'll load update first. Yeah, we don't want to show tips. So it'll go through, it'll build everything. Oh, a new version is available on GitHub. I'll have to download that later. But anyways, so once that's done, you'll notice you have Skyrim ESM, Skyrim SE.exe, which is another mod that we have that it does load, and update.esm. Once you have that, you're going to want to highlight the thing that you want to clean, right-click, and select Apply Filter for Cleaning. Ah, okay. So it actually got rid of that. Wonderful. So my option of how to do that is no longer valid. So we're going to go ahead and close that, and we're going to go back to the how-to, which is why I opened this. So let's go all the way back up. And it says that if we're running this through Vortex, all we need to do is do -quick auto clean. Perfect. Makes it easy. So we'll just go ahead, do edit, -quick auto clean. Save. And we'll just do that for now. And select all. Ah, error, more than one. Okay, so select none, check. So you do still have to do it one at a time. So you have to select, again, update, then Dawnguard, then Dragonborn, then Hearthfires. Click OK. So it'll go ahead, it'll do the same thing that we wanted to do earlier. You'll notice it says start applying filter. Why is it doing that? Because it's applying that filter for cleaning that we wanted to apply earlier when we were trying to do this manually. And it's warning us that there's some unused data. That's fine. It usually just means that it's been overwritten by a different mod. I do like one of the things that it does is it warns you every 10 seconds or so that it's still applying the filter, rather than just letting you know once it's done, so that way you know that, hey, I'm still working, I'm still doing something, I'm just taking a while. It's nice to have that reassurance that it hasn't just completely broken. So, we'll just wait for it to do its thing. Because we had so many identical to master records and other errors in this particular mod, I'm not surprised that it's taking a while. Again, this is the main update file to the actual game, so there's a lot in there. It's going to take a hot minute. And if you really wanted while you're waiting, obviously, once it's done, you can look at all of the different things that it has. So it has some general information, it has their weapon, armor, and ammunition spreadsheets, and then what's new basically just tells you what's been updated, what's in this version that isn't in an old version. This one is the one that is going to take the longest. The rest of them should take significantly less time. And again, while we're waiting for any of these, feel free to ask me any questions that you have. Also, if you can look at the number of processed records up here, you can tell just how much it's actually working. It's going through, 30, 40 records per second. So it's going through a lot. Still line filter. We're almost to 18,000 records. Now we're at 18,000. There we go. So now you can see what it's actually doing. So you can see that it removed a whole bunch of these because they were identical to the master. So it removed a total of 334 records. So now that it's done with that, it's probably going through the removed instances, I believe, is what it's called. So once it's done with the ITM records, it's going to move on to the next stage of auto-cleaning. You'll notice that it's back down to like 6,000 records, so this will take significantly less time. So basically what it means by applying filter is it goes through all of the mod's records and sees which of those records it needs to apply that script to, and then once it's scanned all of the records and queued everything up, it runs that script all at once and deals with all of them in one go, which is why once it gets done with processing the records, as soon as it applies that script, it's done with all of it in a split second. So the fewer records it needs to actually touch on its way through, the shorter time it's going to take. So we had way more identical to master records in these 18,000 records than we do anything else. So we're already up to over 14,000 now, and we're only 3 minutes in, as opposed to this, which took almost 10 minutes. And you'll notice that it also does make saves of your files, just in case. There we go. So, done applying filter, processed records, remaining unfiltered nodes. So it skipped over the deleted nav meshes. It undeleted and disabled these references. It contains 3 deleted nav meshes which cannot be undeleted, which is fine. So then we can just go ahead and click save. It'll tell us there are no unsaved changes, and click OK. And then all we need to do is go ahead and close it, and then start it up again for the next mod. I know that seems like a really dumb way to go about it, but it's just easier to do it that way. So this time, we're going to go ahead and click Dawnguard, and you'll notice that it does kind of check update.esm. That's because the update is required for Dawnguard. So if we were to do Hearthfires, you'll notice it does the same thing, or Dragonborn, it does the same thing. But for right now, we're going to do Dawnguard because that one's next. And again, same thing, we'll just click OK. And we do need to go through and clean each of these before we start doing anything else, because otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to load all of these into standard SSE edit to see what conflicts, and all of these are going to conflict with each other because they're all saying the exact same thing. And it's just going to make our lives infinitely more difficult. That being said, update.esm is the biggest one. The rest of these should take significantly less time, especially the ones that we get to after we get through the main DLC patches. The DLC have a lot of identical to master records and a lot of other issues, so these are going to take the longest. But once we're done with these, any of the others that have identical to masters or anything like that, you know, it has 2 of them, and it'll go super quick. You'll notice that this one is already done with the identical to master records. It had 759 of them, and it's already done. So, now it's moving on to the undeleted or deleted references. And it actually had to go through and do it again for some reason. I'm not really sure why. And you'll notice that there are some errors in here. Those we're going to have to go in and edit manually. And again, it's warning us it contains 57 deleted nav meshes which cannot be undeleted. We're going to have to go in and manually fix those, and we'll follow the SSE edit guide to do that later. So again, we're done with that. We'll just make sure that it's saved. Usually it'll say no unsaved changes. I always like to save just in case, because I've gotten burned once, I learned my lesson, and from now on I'm always going to make sure I hit save, even if I get that message 99% of the time. So again, we did update, we did Dawnguard, now we're going to do Dragonborn. We're going to do Dragonborn before we do Hearthfires, because Hearthfires actually does take some things from both Dawnguard and Dragonborn, even though it doesn't list them as masters. Not really sure why, it just does. Also, technically, Hearthfires is the last of the DLC, even though it's not listed as such. So we'll just make sure we do that one last. So we'll go ahead and do Dragonborn. We'll just click OK. Again, it'll go through the same process. Going much, much quicker because it's a much more simple thing. Yeah, see, it's already done. Again, contains 1 deleted nav mesh. We'll deal with that later. Save. Close. And Hearthfires. Okay. And it's done. 5 deleted nav meshes. Okay. Alright. So now that we're done with that, for the actual official DLC, we're gonna go ahead and run loot again. Just so that way we have our list of mods that actually need it. And you'll notice that it does say, this plugin contains wild edits beyond ITM and undeleted records and deleted nav meshes, and may require additional manual cleaning to not interfere with other mods. And you'll notice it has a dawnguard.esm wild edits cleaning guide link here. We will deal with that. Hello, Chris! Welcome to the stream. We will deal with that once we're done with all of the identical to master records, because we just want to make sure that it's not conflicting because of the other identical to master records. So, the next one on our list is Dwarf Sphere. I don't know which mod that actually is, but we'll roll with it. So I'm actually just going to pop this list up here in front of my stream window that I have up there, just so I can see it without you guys having to stare at it the entire time. And we will just go through our list here. So I'm actually going to sort this by file name, just because it's easier. Because the load order is actually not filled in here, as you can see, so that's really not a good way to sort them. So we're looking for Dwarf Sphere. We'll just go in alphabetical order. And there we are. So we just check that. It'll automatically check anything else that it has listed as a master, and you just click OK, and it'll automatically clean itself. That is not what I wanted. Cancel. Alright. Again, sort by file name. And we're looking for Falskar. No. Exit. Thank you. Falskar. No. Steam, go away. I don't need you right now. I know I clicked on the wrong thing, and I'm sorry. It's like when you accidentally click on Internet Explorer, and then you need to wait forever and a billion years for it to load before you can just close it again and apologize for accidentally thinking that it would be useful to you. I always feel so bad. Grey Cowl. And again, like I said, going through all of these mods beyond the actual DLC, they're going to go so quickly that there's really no reason to not just do all of these edits and cleanups at once. So, enhanced lighting and effects is next. This one taking a little longer, probably because it has a little bit more work to do on it. Yeah, there we go. Alright. And Moon and Star. Oops. And there we go. Yes, that one. And again, for anybody who just stopped in, if you have any questions, let me know. I am more than happy to answer any questions, take any suggestions, hear any complaints. Alright, this one's easy, because this one's Undeath. Oop. We need the faction teleport spells. But yeah, like I was saying, as far as what I changed in this mod pack versus the other one, I did some less script-heavy ones, and more ones that are designed to make the game look better. Not only just the NPCs, but I also finally got a really good Solitude editor beyond just Dawn of Skyrim and JK's Skyrim. One finally came out that added more to Solitude in general and the docks in particular that is compatible with both of those and with Legacy of the Dragonborn, which I was very excited to find, because ones that are definitely very nice, like Solitude Archway, are unfortunately not compatible with Legacy of the Dragonborn in particular, and other edits with Solitude in general. But Enhanced Solitude and Enhanced Solitude Docks are apparently both, they have compatibility patches for both, well, I should say all, JK Skyrim, Dawn of Skyrim, and Legacy of the Dragonborn. So I have all of them installed, so Solitude is going to look absolutely amazing, which is a good thing because we're going to be spending a lot of time there. So I need RS Children. Yes. Okay. Next up is Helgen Reborn, which is one that we didn't get to touch last time. Helgen Reborn is a wonderful mod that works very, very well with alternate start, because it actually gives you a way to rebuild Helgen, and it takes you on a really nice quest line to do it. Some of the voice acting is a bit dated. I won't say that it's bad, but it's a bit dated. Still great, still a wonderful storyline. I will, when I go through it, at the end of it, I will need to put a content warning on it, which is part of the reason I hadn't touched it quite yet in my last playthrough. Anytime I need something that has anytime I do something that needs a content warning like that, I like to spread everything out, so I don't like to do a whole bunch of things that require content warnings super close together. I want to make sure that, if anybody wants to avoid that kind of stuff, they they can without needing to miss huge sections of weeks of watching. So last time we had done, for example, we had the content warning for the horror in the Clockwork Tower mod. Also a very good mod that is still included in this mod pack because I want to be able to show that one off again. We also had the content warnings for when we were going through the Daedric quest line. A bunch of them have deal with some topics which require content warnings, or at the very least, I shouldn't say require, things that I like to have content warnings on because I know that the topics can bother some people, and I don't want anybody to start watching without knowing what we're going to be dealing with. So speaking of Clockwork, that's actually the one that's next up on here. Has 122 identical to master records. Actually, I'm not surprised about that. A lot of the mods that add in a whole bunch of different areas tend to have a lot of identical to master records because, again, the only reason they are there is because they pulled in those master records from the original game files in order to build around it. But obviously, if you're loading it with the actual game, you don't need to load the same master record twice. And again, that's why we're going through and deleting them. We need Treasure Hunter. Yes, Treasure Hunter, not Treasure Hunt. Why do I have two mods that are named so close to the same thing? I don't know anymore. I'm just making a mod pack. I don't do this for a job. I do this for fun. That's why I say if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me. I don't pretend to be a master at any of this or, to know everything about modding. Far from it. It's taken me many, many years to learn how to do this, and that's part of the reason I want to share everything, is because, I wish that I had these kinds of things, these kinds of guides for when I was going through modding. Artifacts.esp. Canaric's Accruements. That's another fun one that I hope we get to see more of. The only reason we didn't get to see more of this one was because we actually didn't fight any dragon priests. At least I don't think we did. But Canaric's Accruements basically adds a whole bunch of new functionality and loot to all of the dragon priests to really make them a little more fleshed out as characters in their own right in the Elder Scrolls lore. Because they're not actually meant to be, these... They're not like, the standard no-name dragons that you fight. They are supposed to be you know, named bosses. They are characters that have their own place in the lore, that have their own stories from back when they served the dragons, before the Dragon War, when people worshipped the dragons, and Alduin especially as the leader of the dragons at the time, and the dragons in general, very much liked being worshipped and began to demand a whole lot from them. So, and the dragon priests were often the one who organized all of that. Okay, we need cities and factions this time. Cities and... yeah, this one. Okay. KT weapon pack. I think that's another one that we didn't have last time, is this particular weapon pack. Artifacts of Boethia. Ooh. We're almost to the end here. Ruin's Edge. What does it add? Which one? KT weapons? It adds in a new weapons pack. I forget specifically which one. Actually, I can probably look it up here. One moment, please. What? Weird. Oh, of course there's an update. I literally downloaded these 2 days ago. Damn. Thus is the world of modding. Okay, KT weapons. Yeah, Chthonia's unique weapon pack, I believe it is. Yes. So, it adds in a number of unique Dragonborn weapons, which look very nice. Or actually, a bunch of different ones. I mean, that just looks badass. And spoilers for where everything is. So it just adds in a couple of different items in Solstheim. So it gives you a little bit more to do in Solstheim. But those weapons were too good for me to pass up, especially if they do have a spot in the museum, which they do. So... Staff of Sheogorath. I believe we actually went through that particular... Oh no, we went through the Ruin's Edge mod. Immersive jewelry. And that is the last one, actually, that we needed to clean. At least for the ITM records. Perfect. Okay. And save. Close. Perfect. Okay. So, now, I noticed that it is warning us about certain patches that got re-enabled. Like this one here. So, I'm going to go ahead and close out of this for a second. I'm going to rerun it, so that way we're not getting all of the ITM record errors anymore. And you'll notice that we have significantly fewer things here. There are some that still have ITM records, which means we'll just have to go through those again, but I'm quickly going to disable these ones that we don't need here. So, cloaks. We can disable this one, because we already have this, or we already have a different patch. Yeah, it's already included in this one. Same goes with the RDO. We don't need this patch because we have this patch. Oops, not what I wanted to click on. Thank you. We need to go through those again. Anything else I need to worry about? No. Okay. So those were the only two that we needed to worry about there. So those are disabled. We'll go ahead and close loot again. And run loot again. And it says we haven't sorted our load order, so we'll go ahead and do that, just to make sure it recognizes that we disabled those. They probably got re-enabled because we were using Rybash, and it auto-selected all of those. So, again, there's going to be some fighting between the two. You just need to make sure that if Rybash re-enables something, you disable it, etc., etc. You never want Rybash to be the last thing that you run before you play the game. I would recommend loot be the last thing that you run before you play the game. So now we can see that we do still have some of them that are warning about ITM, or wild edits beyond ITM. So specifically, we have Dawnguard warning about it, Undeath warning about it. This one still has some deleted nav meshes that we need to deal with. These ones, for some reason, still have ITM records, so we'll make a second pass of those quickly. So again, I'm just going to put that up here. Now, when it comes to doing second passes of deleting ITM records like this, if you run it once and it misses them, go ahead and run it one more time. If they are still not removed, then just leave it, because at that point it's likely that those records got marked as do not remove in a way that loot can't actually pick it up. So if you run it once and it misses it, run it once more. If it's still there, at that point, just leave it alone. Don't try to go in and manually delete them. You're just asking for trouble when you do that. I've learned that from experience. Okay, so we went ahead and did those. I don't know if we forgot them, or if it just had a different issue with it. But again, we'll go ahead and just close out loot again, relaunch loot, and see what it has to say. We'll sort our load order this session again, just to make sure. You will notice that our total messages went down, which is a good sign. just wait for it. Also, for those of you who want it, Farming Simulator 19 is now supported in Vortex, so you can officially mod Farming Simulator, if that's your thing. I don't judge. Yeah, so you'll notice... Oh, that's the deleted nav meshes. Okay. Okay, so we did get rid of all of them. So the ITM records are now all done, and now we just have the wild edits. But well, the first thing we're going to deal with is the wild edits for Dawnguard, because that one has a specific guide. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. So, this is the only step required. The old guide is obsolete. You do not need to confirm that this is the only step. If there were more steps, they would be shown. It's their way of really making sure to say, this is the only thing you need. So, remove XEZN subrecord from Riften Ratway Zone. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to SSE Edit and edit this, and we're going to just remove this command line so that it is not automatically running the quick clean. And click Save. We'll go ahead, run SSE Edit, and we want to make sure that we are loading only Dawnguard. So select None, select Dawnguard. You'll notice it has Update and Skyrim, that's fine. Click OK. It has to go through and load everything, that's fine. Okay. So the background loader is done. It is all loaded. So now, upper left corner, enter this into the Form ID field in Xedit, and hit enter to jump to that cell. So we'll just copy that, paste it here, hit enter. Ta-da! It pulls it up. And this is where you really start to see why SSE Edit is so good for actually editing these things. It has all of the data for this particular cell listed for every single mod that we have selected that loads this cell. So it has Skyrim ESM, Update ESM, and Dawnguard ESM. Perfect! And you'll notice that it has the signature, the data size, the record flags, all of the data about what it has, what kind of an area it is, the color, everything. It has everything. But you'll notice this XEZN encounter zone is the one that we're dealing with here. Right-click the indicated subrecord and choose Remove. So, good thing they have a picture here. So, in this case, we want to go over to where it is under Dawnguard ESM, right-click, and select Remove. So, again, you just go over here, make sure you click it so that that dotted border is around the one under Dawnguard ESM, right-click, and select Remove. Warning! You are about to edit a module file. If you have the slightest doubt about what the implications of your change are, you shouldn't be doing it. Are you absolutely sure you want to continue? Yes. It will do that once per session of loading SSE Edit, because it wants you to know that, hey, what you're doing is going to edit this module file. Don't do it unless you absolutely know what you're doing. In this case, all we're doing is getting rid of that so that it doesn't conflict with actual Skyrim ESM or any other issues with edits to that script later on. That's what's called a wild edit. In other words, it was edited, but it doesn't actually change anything, so it's worse to just have it there. But you can't delete it from Skyrim, so you have to delete it from Dawnguard. So once we're done with that, we'll click Save. Yep, you want to save Dawnguard ESM. You want to make sure it says Backup Plugins. You always want to make sure that you have that. For this particular edit, it's not as important, but especially when you're going in and making your own edits, you really want to make sure that you have that Backup Plugins, because otherwise, if you make a mistake, you won't have anything to go back to. So always make sure you have a backup. So you'll just make sure that's checked, make sure that this is checked, and click OK. Done. Perfect. We're done with that. Okay. So now that we are done with that, we will go ahead, we'll close loot again. And we'll just make sure that it stops running. There we go, and run it again. And just make sure that there's nothing else that it's going to warn us about with any of the DLC files, as opposed to any of the other mod files we have. And always make sure to sort anytime you make an edit to a mod, because based on what you edit, it may shift things around a little bit. And it'll yell at you until you do, so it's best to just appease it by sorting every time you load it. Perfect. Okay, so you can see that the first thing that is listed here is now Legacy of the Dragonborn, which means that all of our main DLC files are no longer throwing any sort of warnings or errors. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. And now we can go through to the next one that has an issue. So for these, it's recommended you read the compatibility notes. It's always going to say that for larger mods like these that have a compatibility notes section, because it's their way of saying, hey, we do our best to make sure that everything's compatible, but we're not 100% accurate. Make sure you read the compatibility notes, because if you don't, and you load something that's not compatible that we don't know about, and your game crashes, don't blame it on us. You didn't read the notes. So, we're gonna skip that. We're gonna go straight to Undeath. It says, this plugin contains wild edits. And we have a specific Undeath wild edits cleaning guide. Because people are nice enough to actually make guides about this. So, remove the following records. Note that some of these may have been removed during quick auto clean. So it's the same thing that we did last time. We're just going to copy each of these and search for them in the form ID list. So let's minimize that. I'm going to move this up here just for right now. We'll launch SSE Edit. Again, right-click, select None. We'll sort by file name and select Undeath. And it'll load everything else that it needs. So you'll see that it draws some stuff from Dragonborn Dawnguard, the update, se.exe, and Skyrim. So when we search for these form IDs, some of them will be showing up in multiple different areas. So we'll just copy that, paste it in here, and hit enter. And interestingly, yeah, so this one was probably already deleted by the quick edit. So we can skip that one. So again, what we would be looking for is any of them that are still marked as red. There's a lot of things that we need to do here. But again, we only want to do that if it's under undeath.esp. We don't want to do that if it is under Skyrim ESM. So if it's not under Undeath, we don't care. You don't want to delete from Skyrim ESM. That's a great way to break your game. So, we'll just go ahead and go down the list, and if we find any that are in Undeath, like this one, is this one actually listed under Undeath? No, that one's listed under Skyrim, so... Oops. Okay. So in that case, we want to... right-click on the one under Undeath, and click Remove. Again, it's going to yell at us because this is the first time we're making a change. We'll just click Yes, I'm absolutely sure. Do you want to permanently remove this from Undeath? Yes. And then it'll go back to just having the Skyrim ESM. And we'll just do this with each of these. Yes. And you'll notice that it doesn't have that big pop-up that we need to wait for every time, because it doesn't care. It'll warn you once, and then after that it's like, okay. And you'll notice that as we remove these, a lot of issues that were happening with especially update.esm are going away. So that's going to make our jobs significantly easier. You'll see how they're going from red to this yellowish color. That's always a good sign of how much work you're going to have to do with this later when you are working through all of the mod conflicts in SSE Edit without going through a cleaning guide like this. Right now we're just following the cleaning guide. Later I'll show you guys how to make them work together without necessarily going through the cleaning guide. Now, with this, I'm actually going to see if I can do something here. So you can select more than one of these at once, and it'll show you what the differences are between them. That's a really good way to make sure that, for example, all of these different summon Atronach spells, if you wanted to make sure that they are all the same, selecting them all at once and looking at all of the different keywords and all of the different data to make sure that they're all the same, great way to go about it. But you can't edit all of them at once. So I'm actually just going to move this over here and this here. Perfect. So that way I can just double check. So like this one is also on our list. And again, you just want to make sure that it says from undeath.esp. Does it have... this on the list? It says to not remove these, so you just want to make sure that you're not removing anything that it says you don't want to, obviously. So we're just going to make sure that we don't delete anything that it doesn't explicitly say to delete. So it doesn't say we want to delete those. So I'm just going to go ahead and start copying these again, because that'll be the easiest way. Yeah, there we go. Remove. Yes. Summon Flame Thrall. That sounds fun. And again, you'll notice that some of these are still going to be here. You're definitely not going to be removing every single one of these that is an edit, because some of them are legitimate overwrites. This is just to make sure that there aren't any unnecessary overwrites that are going to lead to other issues down the line. That is annoying that I can't just double-click to select those, or else it'll select something else. But it's fine. It's cool, it's fine, it's cool. Summon Frost Atronach. Oh, that's probably the NPC version of the spell. Makes sense. Summon Dragon Priest. Ooh. There's a lot of cool spells in here. So how's everybody's weekend going? I hope it's going pretty well for everybody. Yes, we did clean the bedroom. This one. And that's the last one in that particular part of the list. Again, do not remove these, that's fine. And then we need to remove these NPC duplicate actors, which it looks like that one was already removed. A lot of these are probably already going to be removed by the remove identical to masters, but not all of them. This is basically a manual removal of identical to master records, because usually the only thing different between the Skyrim version and the undead.esp version is the name of it, and everything else is the same, in which case it can actually interfere with other mods that are looking for it, which is why you just remove it. That's essentially all a dirty edit is. Most of the time, I should say. And again, I know that this seems tedious, but at the same time, A, it's pretty necessary for making sure that all of your mods work together in your game well. And B, could you imagine how much worse this would be if you had to do this without SSE Edit as a tool? You would have to go in to each individual mod file manually and change all of this using the creation kit. And that is absolutely not something that anybody wants to do. And again, every once in a while, it will warn you that you have unsaved changes. Do you want to save now? When it does that, I do like to go ahead and save it, because there's no real reason not to. It's basically like saving your game. It'll save all of the edits that you've done, it'll back it up so that any changes that you've made, there's a version of it before you made all those changes, and that way if you run into any issues, you don't have to go back through and do all of it over again. Alright. Make sure we get this perk. Yes. All of these spells. Again, it may seem like we just did these, but again, these are for the actual spells. The other ones were for the spell effects, which are technically a different thing. Ah, that one actually doesn't get edited by Undeath. That one gets edited by Dawnguard. That's why it's not on the list. But Detect Dead is. Yes. Interesting that there's separate spells for doing it in the offhand. Or the left hand, I should say. I mean, I suppose it makes sense. Still, it's interesting. Should be almost done here. At least with the spells. I don't know what else we would need to do, but it's probably going to be a much shorter list than the spells and spell effects. Obviously, Undeath being a very magic-heavy mod, it's going to have a lot of different things surrounding that. These next ones should be, yep, right here. It's always nice when you get a group of them that's right in a row. Okay, last couple here in the spells list, thank goodness. Yeah, come on. There we go. Okay, and I'm gonna take a second to save that. Perfect. Okay, we do need to do a couple of world space cells. There we go. Remove. Yes. Yeah, and you'll notice that a lot of these have some major issues, but that's why we are removing this. So that way it is better TM. And we'll go through and edit more of these later. But for right now, we're gonna stick with these ones. And save. Because now it's saying edit the following records. We must change the water subrecord value in these spaces to match the value in update.esm. So here's where we start to really edit some records, and this is how we're going to be going about editing records in pretty much any of our future edits. So this is actually a really good time to show you how to do that. So all we're going to do, so let's take this first cell for example, and I'm going to make this bigger so that you can see it easier. So it's telling us, hey, you can see it's red, which tells us there's something major going on with this that means that something isn't working right. When you click on that subrecord, or that particular world cell, it'll highlight the specific spot that is the issue. In this case, the water record. So originally in Skyrim, it didn't have anything here because it didn't think it should have water. The update put water in there, specifically river water flow. Undeath didn't know about that. So it directly matches everything in Skyrim, but we want it to match update.esm. So all we're going to do is click on this once, and click and drag. And that's all you need to do. Because now, that same value is over in Undeath. And it's fine. And we just need to do that with anything that has that particular issue. So you'll notice that we also had this for the Solitude Sewers South Exterior, and we'll just go down the list and take all of these. And now this one has the opposite problem. Skyrim said, yes, we need river waterflow NE. Update says, no, we don't need this. So we're actually going to right-click and remove this so it matches the update.esm. Because that's what we need to do. We need to change the subrecord value to match update ESM. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Or in this case, where it has a different water flow record. Again, in that case, you just click and drag to copy, and it makes itself all nice and happy again. Hello, Kayla! Thank you for bringing the dinosaur chicken nuggies. And there we go. And then we need to right-click undeath.esp and select Apply Filter Selected Files Only. So we're actually going to click Save quickly. And we're going to scroll all the way up. We're just going to do this. Minimize all of this. Undeath. Apply Filter Selected Files Only. Apply the checkboxes indicated by the arrows in the following image and select Filter. So, we need not all of these, but we need identical to master but conflict winner. We need flatten blocks and subblocks, and flatten cell children. And that appears to be it. Yes, everything else looks the same, and click Filter. This will filter to leave only records that are reverting changes. Okay. Okay, so all that was doing was making sure that there were no other records that we needed to edit with, which it did. Or, I should say, that we needed to edit in order to fix everything else that we needed to do. So now there are no more edits that we need. So we'll go ahead and we'll click Save. No unsaved changes, so that is perfectly fine. We'll go ahead and we'll close SSE Edit. And let me just double check and see if there is anything else. Okay. So the next thing we need to deal with is deleted nav meshes. So we're going to close this manual cleaning guide for right now. And we'll see in Treasure Hunter ESP, the SSE edit found 5 deleted nav meshes. It is strongly recommended not to use mods that have these. More information here. So we'll go ahead and we'll click on it. Will be listed. Cause you either accidentally deleted a vanilla nav mesh using the cell window in the creation kit, or you merged 2 nav meshes in the creation kit listed as islands. In either case, if the error shown is consistent with the above, you have a vanilla nav mesh that's been deleted. The easiest way to do it is to open the creation kit, find each of the cells you're working with, gather up the form IDs, so that's how to do it for ones that are vanilla. In this case, it's saying that it should be done by the mod author. I don't think we need to worry about that because of what this particular mod does. Specifically, it adds in a bunch of new treasure maps. What about the ones that are strawberry banana? What do you mean, in SSE edit? I'm gonna close that and rerun loot while I'm waiting for some clarification there from Abe. Yeah, okay, yeah, so that's what we're gonna be doing next. I wanted to go through everything that we were warned about in loot. Oh, I see, I get it. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the color. So was the strawberry as in the red ones and the banana as in the yellow ones. Okay, yeah, no, I get it now. I get it. Sorry I was slow on the uptake there. But, so now we only have one warning. It's still just warning us about these deleted nav meshes in treasurehunter.esp. I'll do some research after the stream today and see if I can figure out more about that and see if anybody has like a patch or a fix for that. But for right now, we're going to ignore that. And now I'm going to show you how to use SSE Edit to really make sure that everything in your mod pack is ready to work together in the best way possible. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to launch SSE Edit again. Again, you can only have so much selected at once. Though because it'll give you an error if you try to launch it. I mean, it might. I actually don't know. We'll go ahead and we'll launch all of them just because. Why not? Let's do it. So what it's doing right now is it's actually pulling in all of the information from all of these different mods. And it's seeing which particular files are edited or overwritten by other files within the mods. And we'll just wait until it's done. We're waiting for it to get all the way down to the bash patch. So we'll go ahead and we'll load all of these mod groups and click OK. Perfect. And then we'll go ahead and we'll just start. So once you've loaded everything into SSE Edit, you want to work from the bottom up. Why do you want to work from the bottom up? Because if you start up here at the top, just like we were doing earlier, if you click on Update ESM and right-click and apply the filter for selected files only, it's only going to show you everything that that particular mod uses and overwrites, and what it overwrites up. So we would only see update.esm, skyrimsc.exe, and skyrim.esm. It wouldn't show you anything that overwrites the update. Rocky Road mods. I mean, we do have mods that update the roads and their rocks, so close enough? So anyways, you want to make sure that you go from the bottom of the mod list up, so that way you're seeing everything that is loading those particular files and overwriting them. So we're actually going to start with the bash patch. We're going to right-click, apply filter, selected files only. And again, we're going to make sure that we have... we're actually going to make sure that we have... We don't need to do identical to master, because we already cleared those out. We're going to do master, benign conflict, override without conflict, conflict winner, conflict loser. And we're still going to do those, and click filter. And obviously this is overwriting a lot. Select all. Okay. And we wait, because it's going to take a while to apply this filter. It's overwriting a lot, but we still want to see what it's overwriting. Whether we'll do anything with it with the bash patch, I don't know, but I did want to load it just to see what all it has so far. And you'll notice that it's already up to almost 35,000 records. There's a lot of different records that are being loaded and touched right now. It's going to take a little while, because it's mainly loading all of these different patches into the same instance here. But that's going to be very important to us to see which of these patches are overwriting each other, and which ones are overwriting their parent mods, and in which order, and it allows us more control to decide what we want to bring over. And you'll see what I mean in a minute here once we've actually loaded everything. So it's already loaded all of it, it's now just applying the filter. And we're up to several 100,000 records. And it did run into an error with Palaces and Castles Enhanced. I'm not surprised about that. There's going to be some errors that it's going to run into trying to filter everything. It's fine. You can just ignore it unless it says, like, hey, I can't load anything in this particular mod, in which case you may want to just reinstall the mod, re-download it, and reinstall it to make sure that everything that you need is there. But if it's just saying that it can't load these couple of cells, then we don't really care. Still loading. But again, because it's gone through all of this at least once, yes, please hold. Because it's gone through all of this at least once when we were applying the filters earlier, it does save a lot of, basically it saves a lot of that data for quick reference, so it takes a lot less time to go through all of these different records and filter them than it does the first time that you're actually going through and adding a filter. So does anybody have any questions about SSE Edit so far? Is there anything that I didn't clarify, or anything that that was a little confusing about what I was explaining that somebody wants me to go over while we're waiting here? Because that is what I am here for, is to answer your questions as best as I can. Okay, and we're done. So you can see there's a lot of red in here. And the main thing that you really want to be, yeah, eek is right. But that's why we're doing this. So, we're going to go all the way down to bashpatch0.esp. We don't want to deal with everything else above it right now. And all we're going to do is we're going to expand all of these down as much as we can. So you'll see we have a bunch of activators that are having issues. Any of these that are this yellow background with green text, you can ignore those. It means that yes, these are overwritten, but they are overwritten in such a way that it doesn't really matter. So, the only things that you might want to make sure of are, for example, you see that Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul is overwriting Unofficial Skyrim Special Edition patch and adding this full name. If we want that full name in there, we'll just have to make sure that we copy it over to the bash patch, which I am going to do because a full name could be pretty important for something that Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul needs. If there were a patch for the Unofficial Skyrim Special Edition that kept this value the same as in the unofficial patch, then I would leave it that way in the bash patch. But you always want the bash patch to match whatever is loaded last, because it may have not automatically imported something that last mod needs, and the last thing you want is for that value to not be there for something that it needs, especially if it's an activator. So we're just going to go ahead and click and drag it over. It's going to give us our usual standard first warning, and it's going to yell at us more, so we'll just go ahead and copy it over to the Unofficial Skyrim Special Edition patch as well, and now you'll notice it's back to being green, so it's fine. So then we have the amulet fragments for Galder's Amulet, and you'll notice that it's because of a couple of different issues here. So, Reliquary of Myth, which is a mod that applies a bunch of overhauls to a bunch of unique items, has these alternate textures for these particular items, as well as different file names. So we need to make sure that we're using the ones that we want. Now, we have the model file name. It doesn't include a different texture, though. The Zim's Complete pack doesn't have a different texture. It just has a different mesh. Now, I'm wondering if there is possibly a compatibility patch between the two, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the Google, because that's a very good way of figuring out whether there's a compatibility patch. So we are looking for Skyrim Special Edition, Reliquary of Myth, Zim's Immersive Artifacts. Enter. Okay. Alright, so let's go into each of these, just because we have the links to them, and see if either of them have patches available. So we have a white file fix, but that doesn't have a patch. Does this have a patch? It does not. Let's take a look at the installation instructions. This one doesn't have any. Does this one have a compatibility list? compatibility questions in the Q&A for compatibility info. Okay. So, we'll go over to posts. Don't know if the Q&A is there or somewhere else. Probably on here. All of the individual mods introduced with Sims Immersive Artifacts are designed to be merged into one ESP file. Yeah, so we already have the whole thing. Q&A. Create a version on limited charges. Compatibility questions. This mod has good compatibility. Generally, any mods that only change the mesh or textures will be compatible, except for those affecting the Galder Amulet. So, of course, the Galder Amulet is the only thing that it really needs. So, we will need to decide whether we want to use the Zims or whether we want to use the Reliquary of Myth. I've seen the Zims Immersive Artifacts one, and it's pretty similar to the standard one from Skyrim, so I'm actually going to tell it to use the one from Reliquary of Myth. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this value here, and click and drag it over to the bash patch. It's going to yell at us, but what we're also going to do is take this whole section here. So if you'll see that all of these are under this section. So if we take this section and click and drag over, you'll notice that it fixes that. And then it is still going to yell at us because of Zims. I'll just make sure that this gets dragged over to here as well. So yes, we're editing the Zims complete pack to say, don't use your own file, use this other file instead. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I said that the edits we're going to be doing are going to make it so that now this ZIA complete pack.esp, if you wanted to make a different mod pack that used the Zims file, you're going to need to reinstall it. And this is why you always make backups of all of your files when you go ahead and save it. Because otherwise, now my zims.esp is a different file. The rest of this we can leave, even though it's yellow and not green, because it just means, hey, this isn't all exactly the same across the board. You don't need it to be entirely green. You just need it to be not red. So we're just going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to do the same thing with all of these. So we're just going to click and drag these over, and click and drag this for each of these. And again, we just want to make sure that this has this same full name for the grain mill, just in case Complete Alchemy and Cooking needs it, because otherwise the bash patch won't load it. And you'll notice that once we've resolved all of them, the activator section now shows as yellow, which again just means, hey, there's overwrites, but all of those overwrites are compatible with each other. And all we need to do is go down the list for all of these and choose which ones we want. And again, so we'll see here, we have the DBM/Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul patch that's saying, I need you to use this particular model file name. We'll make sure that that is the one that the bash patch is using, and we'll make sure that it is the one that Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul is using. Because otherwise, Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul is going to keep trying to look for that other file name. So we're just redirecting it and saying, no, I need you to use this other model file name. And once we do that, everything goes from being red back to this nice yellow with the green text. And we'll just do that with each of these. Now here is a bit of a different issue, So you'll notice that this Dragonborn Museum patch has this particular keyword that wasn't imported into the bash patch. Usually when that happens, you just need to copy it over, and it'll go ahead and fix itself. In this case, we really need that patch keyword to be in the bash patch, because otherwise, something in our Dragonborn Museum may not work correctly. And again, same goes for any of these effects. You always want the last patch to be what you're using. In this case, we have the weapons, armor, clothing, and clutter overhaul, but we actually want it to make sure that we're using the complete alchemy and cooking overhaul, because that is the effect that we want, the base effect. So again, we're just going to take this and copy it over. Okay. Okay. So we can't copy from complete alchemy and cooking to this patch, because this has a higher load order than this. But what we can do, or should be able to do, is take it from this patch. No, we can't take it from that patch either. Can we take it from the bash patch? No, we can't. Well, that's a bugger. Okay. Can we do it from here? No. No, of course not. I'm gonna expand this out quickly. Okay. In which case, what I'm gonna try to do is take this and have it overwrite this. There we go. So when in doubt, you can always take the effect from Skyrim ESM and copy it back over to these mods. So that way, this overwrite will only have this overwrite. The reason it was yelling is because we had more than one overwrite to the same effect. So we had this one, we had the one that was here, and we had this one. This one is the one that we want, and as long as this one is overwriting this one, it's fine. But otherwise, if we had the multiple overwrites, it was really just gonna have a bad day. And same goes with all of these, so we're just gonna copy these over. Now here's one where you really need to keep an eye on it. So in this case, I have this mod that's called Awesome Potions. What it does is it makes sure that all of my potions have much better look to them. And that is the patch that I want to use the model for. So you'll notice that the Dragonborn Museum Keiko patch is using this other one, and that's the one that the bash patch is loading. But I want to make sure that we're using Awesome Potions, mainly because I have a different mod that acts as a patch between my Awesome Potions and Dragonborn Museum. So if I don't have this overwrite this, then that other patch is going to have issues. So you'll see that the potions.esp and the Awesome Potions patch have the same stats here, as well as this Potions Keiko patch. So all we're going to do, again, is make sure that we take this, and you can actually click above here to take everything in the model section, and just copy it over here. And it'll fix everything except for this, in which case we'll just copy that over. And now it's fixed. So now, when we load this, and I'm actually going to just make sure that we have this over here. I'm actually not going to do that. So it will load this, but the bash patch will make sure that this alternate texture gets loaded as well. If we need to copy everything over later, we can, but for right now, I'm going to leave it as is because I don't want to risk making any files masters. And what that means is, so you saw when I try to click and drag this over, to continue, the following files need to be added to this as masters. Do you want to continue? So this is designed to be a patch between the Dragonborn Museum and Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul. If I make this other mod, the Awesome Potions texture mod, a master of this, simply because I'm taking these textures from it, that's going to cause a lot of issues down the line, because it can then mess with our load order and just cause a whole bunch of issues. So I'm not going to risk doing that simply because I have this alternate texture in the bash patch, and the bash patch is always the last thing to load. So we'll leave it there for right now. If we run into issues later, we can always fix it. Another one where it's the effect. And again, we want to make sure that the Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul is the effect that we end up with. This one involves object bounds and the model file name, because it is not only having issues with the Awesome Potions, it's also having issues with Tamrielic culture. But again, we want to make sure that the Awesome Potions model file name is the one that gets pulled in, and that's the one that the bash patch is already using. So we will just make sure that this one gets carried over to Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul. And with the object bounds, we're going to want to do the same thing. So you'll see that it's using... it's actually using these particular object bounds, probably because the Tamrielic culture takes a bunch of potions and places them where they need to go. So we're going to go ahead and follow this, rather than the Awesome Potions, because it's clear that the Awesome Potions patch is pulling them from Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul. But because this is loaded after this, we want to make sure that this is where it ends up. So we're just going to go ahead and click and drag this over each time. And just make sure all of these agree with each other. Anything else? Yes, it's also yelling about effect data. So, effect data, we actually want to do the opposite. We want to make sure we have the effects of Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul, which the bash patch is doing, but the Tamrielic culture is still yelling about it. So we're just going to take this and click and drag it over. In this case, it's taking the base effect and not using the correct magnitude from the Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul. So we're going to click and drag that over. And the same goes for this duration. It's not using the proper duration from Complete Alchemy and Cooking, so we'll just make sure that it does. Yeah, and again, in this case, Reliquary of Myth is editing this particular thing. Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul is still just drawing the same thing from Skyrim. So we want to make sure that it's set to draw it from Reliquary of Myth instead. We also want to make sure that these flags of no autocalc are carried over. And we also want to make sure that the base effect is actually sent over as well, because you'll see that this one is the same as this, but we actually want the Reliquary of Myth one. So we'll just... we'll actually click no on that, and just carry it over that way. And that works. So now that one is entirely set. Ooh, the white file is always fun. So again, we just want to make sure that it's using that in the bash patch. Perfect. The Juniper Maid. And again, you'll see that the Dragonborn Museum Keiko patch has it as this. The regular Complete Alchemy and Cooking Overhaul has it as something else. We want to make sure that it uses this one, so we'll just click and drag all of these over to make sure that it knows which one to use. Ooh, these are always fun. Now, why is it yelling about the base effect? Because, at least for the first part, it looks as though all of those are the same. Because it changes it to restore vampiric health. Interesting. Okay. So again, we just make sure that this gets copied over here. We're gonna click no. But we can do it. No, we can't do it that way. Why is it not letting me do it that way? That's why. We just needed to make sure that it actually copied the right one. And then make sure we put that over here. And make sure we copy that over, as well as all of the effect data, and all of this effect data, and there we go. Watered Elixir of Well-Being. Again, small DLC to make sure that we have all of the nice new potion looks. And again, I know that all of this seems really tedious, but it's the little things like this that'll keep you from loading into your game and having things that aren't using the right files, or having things that don't use the correct textures, or have missing textures, or having potions that are supposed to give you one effect because of a mod that you have, but are giving you a different effect that you don't want. So it's really worth it to take the time to go through and edit all of this before you go into your game, as opposed to loading into your game and realizing that you now have all of these issues, and having it just kind of ruin your day. So, we've done activators and ingestibles. Thankfully, a lot of these ones will not have as many. So, for example, ammunition, we have the Forsworn Arrow. We have this immersive weapons and clothing and clutter overhaul patch. We just need to make sure that this keyword gets dragged over, so that way it knows that this belongs to a particular faction. Armor add-ons. Ooh, because we have complete crafting overhaul and immersive jewelry, we want to make sure that it is using the correct editor ID. Which one do we want? We also want to make sure that it has the appropriate races as well. Not sure why it's not included in the unofficial patch or in the complete crafting overhaul, but there we go, so that one's fixed. Now, it's already using this other file name for the model, which is fine because you'll notice that the immersive jewelry one is exactly the same as the default one, in which case we want to make sure that it has the correct editor ID. So we'll just copy it from Complete Crafting Overhaul over to the bash patch. And the same goes with this. Oops. And if you ever make a mistake like that, boop, you can just fix it. And there we go. Again, just make sure that gets copied over. I'm not sure why they're missing so many race models in Complete Crafting Overhaul, but it's definitely something that I would want to make sure is fixed before I go in and start playing. Especially if you have another mod that's trying to use that same info. And honestly, like, as much as I say that this seems tedious, it's going through stuff like this that it's actually almost therapeutic, going through and fixing all of these issues and just watching everything change from red over to green. Okay, so we actually have this race compatibility, which is taking these particular items and making sure that they are compatible with the different races. So you'll notice that this is specifically for Jewelry Necklace Silver AA for the Argonian race. So we're just going to make sure that it's using the race compatibility file. And just make sure that we take this flag over here and drag it over so that it has that particular file, because you can see it didn't before. And the same goes with the RS children. So we want to make sure that all of this gets carried over to the bash patch, because the more flags that we have for it to apply that body template properly, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and say yes to that, because in this case, the bash patch already has all of these other ones as masters, and this is an ESM anyways. So we're gonna go ahead and click yes on that. It just means that this particular mod is going to have to be loaded in order for the bash patch to work, which is fine, because we're not going to be uninstalling this in the middle of our playthrough. Alright, and there's all the armor add-ons done. Oof, okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Is that what the issue is for all of these? No, it's only an issue for this particular one. Now, MXPF. So Weapons, Clothing, and Clutter Overhaul brought in this particular armor rating for it. These each have a different armor rating, a different weight, and a different value. for the same item, which is iron gloves. So, let's go ahead and find mxpf.zip. What is mxpf? It doesn't have anything. Okay. Back to Google. Skyrim Special Edition mxpf.zip. Xedit patching framework. Interesting. But I don't have that. Am I looking at the wrong thing? No, I'm not. Either way, I'm just going to make sure that the one from the weapons, armor, and clothing overhaul is the one that eventually gets used. So I'm just going to click and drag that over. And just make sure that it's what gets used by all of these. Mainly because weapons, armor, clothing, and clutter overhaul is the main thing that I want to have as the official edit for those. And again, in this case, we just have different world models that we just need to copy over. More object bounds. We'll make sure that it's using the ones from the clothing and clutter. So here we have our Authentic Legion and weapons, armor, clothing, and clutter fixes. We always want to make sure that what this uses is what this is using, and that it gets copied over to here. So, we'll make sure that that gets copied, and in this case, that one needs to get copied, and that's fixed. Elven Shield. And this one is a lot. So, with keywords, you can always just copy it over. The more keywords that you have, the better, in my opinion. It may end up with you having multiples of certain things. So, for example, in this case, we're looking at the Imperial Shield, or Imperial Light Shield. And it's yelling because we've got light, studded, and heavy all listed in the same thing. So, in this case, I do want to keep that, I guess. Do I, though? No, I don't think I do, because the weapons, armor, clothing, and clutter overhaul patch doesn't have it. So I'm actually going to remove that, and you'll notice that it actually fixes that issue. And we'll make sure that this gets copied over to be appropriate. And we'll just make sure that this gets copied over. Perfect. And sure, we'll go ahead and save because it's yelling at us to do so. Why not? It's never a bad idea to save while you're in the middle of this. Remove, copy this over, and remove that one. And just make sure that this gets copied over. Oh, and it's still yelling. Ah, because it wants Imperial Armor to be the name of it, which is fine. That will also be important for making sure that everything gets displayed properly in the museum. If you have different names for different things, or different names for the same thing, I should say, between all of these mods that aren't resolved, then you could have something that needs to be displayed, or even worse, something that you want to wear, and it doesn't know what to make of it. So, alright. Okay. Now, for this name, I always like using anything that has more words, because this is what the display name is going to be. So this is the name that it uses as the editor ID, which you can see update over here, but this is how it's actually going to show up when you go to take it. So I don't want it to say Orichalc Emerald Circlet. I want it to say Orichalcum and Emerald Circlet. So I'm just going to copy that over to make sure that that is the full name that it's going to be using. And I also want to make sure that it is using the appropriate value. Now, in this case, it's using the immersive jewelry value. I personally think that that is a little bit high. Immersive jewelry tends to make the value very similar to what it would be in real life. I personally don't like that. I much prefer using the complete crafting overhaul value, which is definitely higher than the Skyrim value, but it doesn't feel cheaty making a whole bunch of them to use. So we're just going to make sure that those are all set to use this particular value. And the same is going to go for all of these. So we'll make sure that it uses Jewelry Circlet, the Silver and Pearl Circlet, and that it's using this particular value. Now you will notice that it also has this other alternate texture that we will also copy over. And we'll also make sure that this Z gets copied over. Because we do want to make sure that these immersive jewelry files can get loaded, but it doesn't really hurt anything if we have both alternate textures in here. We will make sure that we use the lower of the values, though, because we still don't want to cheat our way through any of this. 770 gold is much more reasonable of a value than 3,000. Again, just making sure that everything has the same keyword. Jewelry, copper, and opal. Ooh. And here we have another issue. So, I don't know why we have it in immersive sounds, but we also have the unlimited rings and amulets. So, we want to make sure that it has this flag, or no, we actually don't want to have that flag. So we're going to go ahead and click. Why can I not remove that? Because I need to remove it from there. So we're actually going to go ahead and remove that entire section. We will make sure that it has the... I can add it, and we'll just make sure that it has clothing as the armor type. So that way, it doesn't have this first-person flag that says that this is a ring. The reason for that being, we want to make sure that this isn't going to set off that little flag that says, hey, you're wearing a ring, you can't wear anymore. That's what this uses. So by removing that, we make sure that we can wear as many of these as we want. Now, we see that there's a bunch of different models here. We have the one that's being used by Immersive Jewelry, which is the one that Bash Patch is using. We have the one from Complete Crafting Overhaul, and the one that is used by everything else. I personally really like using the Immersive Jewelry, so we're just going to copy that over. And we're also going to copy over the new texture. But we can't do that because it has a higher load order. Of course we can't. In which case... I can't edit it either. But, I can remove this. There we go. So now, it's only going to use the Immersive Jewelry texture. And we just want to make sure that we're using this particular value and this particular weight. Perfect. Guard of the Rift's shield. Okay. So here we have a different set of mods. We have Weapons Armor and Clothing Clutter Overhaul and Guards Armor Replacer, as well as their patch. So you notice that it's mainly conflicted about what type of armor. The Weapons and Clutter Fixes is the only one saying it's not heavy, so we'll just make them all say this is heavy armor. And then we also want to make sure that the weight is accurate. So this is saying the weight needs to be 14. We'll make sure that everything says that the weight is 14. Okay, so in this case, we need to make sure all of the keywords are accurate. So we want to make sure that we're using the patch keyword. And that's all we need to do for that one. And the same goes for any of the armor. Now again, this is the kind of stuff that you really want to make sure that you fix before you load into your game, because otherwise, you notice how the Bash patch didn't have these keywords that say that this material and this armor material guard, those keywords weren't in this Bash patch, which means that more likely than not, these armors would not have been able to be distributed out to the guards. So these nice new armor replacer, the nice new armor replacer mod that we have, wouldn't have been the one that was correctly loaded. we would have ended up with naked guards. And that's not something that anybody wants. Well, I mean, okay, amending that statement. There are some people who want that. That's not what we want for this particular mod pack. I won't judge you if you want to have naked guards in your game. But, again, Twitch kind of frowns upon that sort of thing, so we don't want that. We want to take every possible step to make sure that that doesn't happen. Ooh, this one's gonna be fun. So this one is touched by a lot. We have the main game, unofficial patch, immersive sounds, again for some reason, Mr. B's unique treasures, the unlimited amulets and rings, immersive jewelry, and the bash patch. So what is it specifically yelling about? So first off, it's angry that it doesn't have the unlimited rings and amulets flag taken out. So we'll go ahead and we'll remove that, but we will make sure that we add that section back in and that that counts as clothing. Because otherwise, you might run into some issues when you try to equip it. So we'll make sure that it has that general flag and the armor type of clothing, but it will not be listed as being in Area 35 amulet. So that way we can wear as many of amulets as we want. Next, we want to make sure that the description is correct. So, in this case, we have a physical description. The knotwork medallion portrays the two sides of the Nordic god shore, and that is the one that it has. For unlimited rings and amulets and everything else, it has various other descriptions. Now, we want to make sure that we know which particular effect it's using. So, let's take a look at the effects. So it's using all the same script. Object effect. Power of Sarthal is the same thing that it's using. Interesting. In that case, what I'm going to do is edit. All spells cost 10% less to cast dot. And click OK. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to keep this physical description. This knotwork medallion portrays the two sides of the Nordic god shore, because that is something that I would like to know, especially because we're using the immersive jewelry file as our overwrite. But I also don't want to lose the description of what it actually does. So now that we have that, I'm going to copy this over. Oops. There we go. And then, because I did use this particular mod's effect on it, I'm going to make sure that I copy over that particular value. Okay. And again, here, this is just yelling about what it is listed as. So we don't want the Helm of Ingol to be listed as steel plate. So we'll remove that. And we also don't want the immersive jewelry value. We actually want this one. Ring of Namira. Again, this is just yelling because it wants to make sure that you can wear it along with the unlimited rings and amulets. And it's also yelling about the value. Now, because we want to use Reliquary of Myth, I'm going to use that particular value. And copy that over. We'll make sure we copy over the alternate texture just in case. Remove. Add. Make sure we make it clothing. And again, we just want to use the Reliquary of Myth value. What time is it? It is almost time for us to head out here. Ooh, so here we have a whole bunch of them. So we have this, which is using the standard effect. So we have the option to use... We're going to use the Zim's Artifacts effect. And we're actually going to make sure that we have this other texture. And again, this one is just using the standard. So we're just going to make it look like the fancy Zims one and make sure that it has that. But we're also going to remove this. Ah, what is this? The Argonian race one. Is there... Okay. Ah, because the Zim's Complete Pack is making it Argonian Race Vampire. Ah, and we'll make sure that we copy over... Ah, the Reliquary of Myth description. That is way too much money. We're going to make sure we use this quantity here. And that weight also seems agreeable. Oh, now what's it yelling about? Ah, there we go. Perfect. Again, you might need to finagle things a little bit to make sure that everything agrees with each other, but definitely worth it to do it now versus realizing that nothing works together the way it's supposed to. Right, and we're just going to remove that texture. And we'll just go with the simple weight there. There we go. Ooh, the Ebony Mail. What's it yelling about here? Well, it needs a keyword. And then it's yelling about the value. I mean, I don't particularly care. We're not going to be selling any of this. Okay. Again, want to make sure that it has that. Interesting that it has both of those. I mean, I suppose we can put all of them in there. I don't particularly care. And just make sure these get copied over as well. Yes, what name do we want? We want the noble fur embellished robes. We want to make sure it's listed as survival armor, and that seems fine. Sure, go ahead and save because you're yelling at me. Ooh. Is that the only thing that I need to fix for each of these? Oh, I can also fix the description. Ah, the Reliquary of Myth, Dragon Priest pack. It doesn't have a description, so sure, I'll copy that over just so we know what it does. But we will make sure that we copy the Reliquary of Myth one over. If there's ever a issue between those. Okay, there we go, and here we go. Oops. Yeah, that's the one that we want to use, because that's the one that is the patch. Perfect. Ah, nope, we want to make sure that that's the one that gets copied over. There we go. And again, does anybody have any questions about what it is that we're doing here, or what it is we're trying to accomplish here? Ooh. Yeah, SSE Edit is very neat. It's a absolutely wonderful tool to be able to use. Again, I don't even want to imagine trying to do all of this with just a standard like, just going through manually and changing all of this. It would be an absolute nightmare. And again, I am going to continue doing all of this with all of these different files in between now and the next time that we are in. So unless anybody has any questions or wants me to go over anything right now, I'm actually going to call it there for today. There we go. Alright. Well, in that case, we're gonna go ahead and actually call it a day then, folks. If you think of any other questions in between now and when I'm in again, just feel free to message me. Feel free to message Tyler if you want, if you don't have a way to reach me, and he can get me the question that you have. I am always here to answer any questions that you have about modding, about Skyrim, about just about anything to do with this whole process. So just let me know. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week, and hopefully this should be the last step that we need to do. I'll go ahead and I'll make sure that everything else is ready to go. And next week, we should be able to go ahead and get started with making our character, doing some mod setup. I want to show you guys how I actually go about activating all of the mods and setting them up in the Nexus, or in the MCM once you load into Skyrim. And after that, we'll go ahead and get started with actually playing the game. Thank you guys again for joining me this weekend, and just for stopping in, even if it's just to listen to me ramble on. I greatly appreciate everybody who stops in here. Don't forget that we are, as a Craftic family, still raising money for Rain this month. If you haven't heard about that already, please check it out. If you can go ahead, if somebody can link that in here. I don't know if we actually have the command, and I'm sorry. I should have checked that before. But we are raising money until the end of the month for Rain, so please donate if you haven't already. Thank you guys again for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I will see you all next weekend.